Okay, good evening. Remind me your first name. Liana, welcome. New people here in the room. The video is still starting on Chabad. Let's hope it works. Just works so hard to get everything set up. Okay, 1 second. Well, that's what my personal page is on. Yes, if you're on my page, let's just say hello to everyone watching us. Would it change the subject? I said in 2 weeks on Parshas Chukas. Next time when the Torah comes, then we'll talk about them. For today, we're going to talk about Dasan Aviram, but let's give 1 second. The troublemakers, give me 1 more minute so we can see if we can get this to start. Don't go away just yet. What? Say again, what? Troublemaker in the shofar? No, there's no troublemaker in the shofar. That we don't. Where do we have a troublemaker in the shofar?
That's what they used to say, that Satan has a God and we got to blow him out.
No, we don't blow up. Okay, for those on my personal page, stay with me. Hello, Shira. How are you? Hello, Andrea. Hello, Gail. We have a beautiful class prepared. Chabad, I don't want them to miss the opportunity. I don't know, we always have problems with that Facebook page. Showtime. Well, okay. You know what we're going to do? I'm going to go onto my phone and just do it from there maybe. Because Yosef has the flu. Yes, he has the flu. He's not feeling. Orly's also not feeling well? No. I meant to call it today. Okay, let's start with people watching us. Okay, my friend. So, 1 second. I don't know what to do about this. Okay, guys, give me 1 more second. I'm going to close it and start it again. We don't have a good joke in the meantime while I'm restarting this? What? So in the meantime, a quick announcement. Sunday, God willing, Sunday at 11 o'clock a.m., we're going to be having an amazing lecture with Irene Zisplat. Thank you, Randy, for helping organize it. We'll be meeting her tomorrow. Irene Zisplat is a Holocaust survivor who was one of Dr. Mengele's experiments. So a very interesting story. Randy met her while on the March of the Living, right? So that's how Randy met her, and it's not a lot of survivors left. Not a lot of survivors left. So having
older kids come too?
Yes, we actually have a discount for the seating. It's $10 for kids. Yes, meaning kids that are old enough to appreciate a story. You know what I'm saying? Not for little kids, but for teenagers. Yeah, for your kids. Yeah. Shai is bringing the teens are coming and all that. Yes. Okay. That happened already. Okay. Okay, we're going to begin. You ready, my friends? So, either will work or it's not going to work. I say a joke about chutzpah. You know what chutzpah is? What's chutzpah? First of all, tonight's class is always dedicated in the memory of Yitzchak Tzvi ben Yosef and the Shemesh Shav Elevation, and in the memory of Zev ben Aaron. Dr. Zelenko is here to say this tonight, so we'll have it in mind. Tonight. Yeah. It's a year since his first yard site. Tomorrow I'll be at the cemetery, God willing, at 10 o'clock. Yeah, so it's his yard site tonight. It's first year yard site. So he'll be elevated still to an hour learning tonight, God willing. Okay. Tomorrow at 4:15. Spoke to her not also today. Okay, anyway, so chutzpah. You heard of chutzpah? Chutzpah is the definition, is described by a guy who kills his parents, and then when he comes before the judge, he asks for leniency because he's an orphan. That's called chutzpah. Chutzpah is a Yiddish term. It means like having absolute disregard for any kind of logic or conventional rule and being so audacious, so out of the realm of what would be considered appropriate behavior. That's chutzpah. So I use this as an introduction to talk about two biblical characters that I must confess to you, I must share with you, are people I have never understood. So every week we talk about people in the Bible, and I share with you stories that I can relate to, stories that I can connect with, people holier than me, on a higher level, but at least I can see them as role models and we can try and find lessons in their life. The people I'm going to talk about tonight, the two men we're going to talk about tonight, I'm being honest when I tell you, I have never understood them. And I have thought about this many times because in some ways I can relate to them from the opposite side. The two men I'm referring to are Dasan and Aviram, who are the epitome of what a Jewish complainer is. If you want a biblical source for Jews being negative, depressing complainers who are always fighting, who are always picking on the rabbi, Dasan and Aviram. And Moshe Rabbeinu, who is the most loving of all people, who cares for his people so deeply, so sincerely, with so much authenticity, why he has to struggle with people like Dasan and Aviram in his life is something I've wondered about many times. And that is what? Who was whose family? His family? No, they're from the tribe of Reuven. They're not his family at all. How are they his family? No. Dasan and Aviram are from the tribe of Reuven. One second. Okay, now that we're plugged in, now our battery's not low either. You see, look at that. Okay, so everything is working. So, and I was watching on Chabad too. It's beautiful, thank God. So Dasan and Aviram are the most difficult people a rabbi could ever imagine having in their community. And Moshe Rabbeinu has them too. So if any rabbi ever says, why did I get such and such a person? Moses also had. So tonight we're going to try and go through the story of Dasan and Aviram. And I think I found an explanation in my mind. What I'm going to share is my explanation why they hate Moshe so much and why they're willing to go to such illogical extremes to fight against Moses. And then, of course, we're going to find a lesson for us that we can take from Dasan and Aviram, not how to be, but how not to be. Sometimes we have lessons how to be, and sometimes we have lessons of what not to be. No, I'll say the story now. I was going to say later, but so just to put it into context. If you ever saw a video of a Farbrengen of the Rebbe, so you see the Rebbe speaking, and behind the Rebbe is sitting a whole row of distinguished-looking elder rabbis and Hasidim with white beards, etc. So one of the people, I'm not going to say his name, that had a spot up on that dais behind the Rebbe was not a rabbi or a scholar. He was a very successful businessman who was very dedicated and devoted to the Rebbe's causes, who gave a lot of money to the things that the Rebbe wanted to do. He was a true soldier in the Rebbe's army, but he wasn't from the holy, righteous people that you see up behind the Rebbe. So he would say by a Farbrengen, with a sense of humility that a chassid has, he got one of the most prestigious seats in all of 770, but he had humility. And so he said, when you have chassidim, why do chassidim sit behind the Rebbe? Because this is what he said. When you see the Rebbe talking, you can't relate to the Rebbe. The Rebbe is so holy, he's such a tzaddik. He's not a role model for me. I'm never going to be a tzaddik on the level of the Rebbe. But at least the other rabbis sitting behind the Rebbe, I can relate to them. They're on my level. They're humans. So they put role models behind the Rebbe. Me, I'm sitting there to be a role model of what not to be. In the stance of some people are there to be role models of what to be. I'm a role model of what not to be. So Dasan and Aviram are going to be the role models of what not to be. Okay? That's our objective tonight. I think we'll have a very important, a very powerful takeaway message once we can understand their story and we can relate to it in some logical explanation. Okay. Let's start from the beginning. Are you all with me, my friends? Good evening, everyone that's watching. Good evening, Art. Good evening, Michael. Good evening, Faith. Good evening, everyone, TJ, and everyone watching Chabad.org. I'm glad you're all watching us. Okay. So we're going to start in this week's Torah reading where we have the story of Korach. Let me first give you some background information, which is very important to appreciate what we're about to discuss. Korach, now I won't get too carried away in the story because I have a lot I want to cover tonight. Korach is a cousin of Moses. Korach is very upset that not only is Moses the leader of the Jewish people, his brother Aaron is the high priest. The whole family business is all in their control, and he's not only tough one's in charge of the tribe. He wants some kind of importance, and basically he decides to lead a revolution against Moses. That's the short explanation. Now, Korach knows, like every rebel and every revolutionary, that if you want to inspire people to fight with you, you got to convince them that it's in their benefit. We're all going to fight for equality, and and then I'll be more equal than you are, but we're all fighting for equality or whatever. That's the way it always works in history. So Korach convinces the nation, Kulam Kedoshim, everyone is holy, everyone deserves everyone is holy, everyone deserves to be allowed to serve in the temple, etc., etc. When that happens, he amasses a following of 250 men from the tribe of Reuven who are very upset. And basically, in short, their issue is that they should be the ones serving in the temple. They're the firstborn from the tribe of Reuven. They should serve, and they want that opportunity to bring the incense and to serve in the temple. So these 250 men, they have sincere desire, and in some ways a good desire, to be holy, to be able to enter into the Mishkan and to bring the incense and to have a moment of closeness to God that a regular Jew can't experience in a regular day-to-day experience and can only be experienced inside the temple with the incense. So he got them excited about it. They were wrong, but they were gullible, but at least they had a good intention. But at the same time that he was leading this revolution, there was two other men that joined the bandwagon, Dasan and Aviram. Now, these were professional agitators. That's the word for today. They used to be called troublemakers, right? In Yiddish, they're called kachleflers. You know what that means? A kach is spoon mixers. You put a spoon when you make something. There's some people that like to stir the pot. In Yiddish, what? Which is brew. Yeah, they stir the pot. So in Yiddish, called a kachlefler, where they mix the spot. They're professional agitators. These men, Dasan and Aviram, see this revolution is brewing against Moses. They have no altruistic desires to serve in the temple. They know they're never going to be the high priest. They're not looking to be a high priest. They don't care about all the spiritual elevation of the incense. They are just looking for any pretext they can find to have Moshe lose power and to lose respect amongst the Jewish people. And so they jump onto the bandwagon, and they too come to try and prove that Moshe is not good, etc. So let's go look at this week's Torah reading. You have over here, for those that have the papers, chapter 16, verse number 12. So Moses first speaks to the tribe of Levi, etc., and then verse 12, Moses sent to call Dasan and Aviram, the sons of Eliyav. He wants to meet with them to try and negotiate, to try and they shouldn't join in this revolution that Korach is instigating. But they said, Lo na'ala, we will not go up. And then they say something crazy. Listen to the next slide. Is it not enough that you have brought us out of a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us? They all exercise authority over us. But they took us out of Egypt, which they are describing as a land flowing with milk and honey. And instead of fulfilling your promise to us when we were in Egypt, and you said, come, I'll take you out of the bond of slavery, and flowing milk and honey. Instead, where did you take us to? To the desert. And this is after the story of the spies, where the Jews were already destined to die out in the desert. So you didn't fulfill your promise. You didn't bring us into the land flowing with milk and honey. Instead, you brought us to die in the desert. So you took us from Egypt, the land of plenty, the land of grape. You brought us here to die as if it's your fault. That's what they're saying. Now you also want to be the king over us. You want to have authority and you want to rule us and tell us we should come meet with you. Lo na'ala, we will not go up. They were actually prophesizing they would not go up. They would go straight down to the very depth of purgatory, to the depths of hell. They would go in this story. We won't go up. And then they continue. I jumped ahead a little. You have not even brought us a land flowing with milk and honey, nor have you given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Even if you gouge out the eyes of these men, referring to themselves, we will not go up. The level of hatred that you're getting in this verse is intense. It's one thing to behind someone's back, behind the rabbi's back, to make fun of him, to talk bad or whatever, and a little gossip. It's another thing in a person's face to be so defiant and to say, you failed us, you lied to us, you cheated us, you promised us a land flowing milk and honey, instead you brought us to die in the desert. But to use such intense language, even if you gouge our eyes out, we will not go up. We refuse to let you be a king over us. This is intense language. This is not just, I have a disagreement with you and I don't agree with your way of running things. This is straight up, I hate you. So the verse will continue. Moshe speaks to the Levites. Verse 25. Verse 25, Moshe realizes that there's going to be a competition the next day where the men are going to be bringing pans of incense towards the Mishkan. By the way, last year's class, we talked about Korach and these 250 men. So if you want to hear more about them, it's last year's class. I want to stay focused only on these two, Dasan and Aviram. So verse 25 continues the story where Moses arose and went to Dasan and Aviram. And the elders of Israel followed him. I need to interrupt myself for a second before we go further. Even though I want to focus on Dasan and Aviram, this is an extremely powerful lesson right here. An extremely powerful lesson in how never to remain stuck in an argument. The extreme lengths that Moses is going to in order to try and make peace is astounding. It's astounding. Here are people, and I'm going to tell you some of their history in a minute. You're going to hear some of the history of Dasan and Aviram. You're going to hear how much problems and how much stress and emotional angst these men have caused Moses. And yet, despite it all, and despite their very, very public mockery of Moses' authority and publicly threatening him, you can poke our eyes out and we won't come and listen to you. Moses still tries to make peace with them. He still tries to make peace, which in and of itself is an amazing idea. The level of love and the level of dedication that Moses has to his people that's my role model. That's the way we need to live our lives. To never be stuck in the fight, to never be able to never get stuck to a point where we say, well, he's a hater, she's a whatever. So I'm writing them off and that's it. He's willing to go up and to try and make peace with them. So let's go back to the story. So Moses arises, try, and once again, one last attempt to try and dissuade Dasan and Aviram from spending all night, because that night Korach was going around and Korach was instigating everyone to fight against Moses, and he got all these 250 men who knew that they were going to die. They knew they were going to die, and I spoke about this last year, and they still decided to go bring the incense. All night Korach is instigating. So Moses tries one last time to get Dasan and Aviram to this next morning to not join the fight. So verse 26, he spoke to the congregation saying, please get away from the tents of these wicked men. They refused to come out to meet him. That I'm skipping. Here we were now. Please go away from the tents of these wicked men. Do not touch anything of theirs, lest you perish with all their sins. Verse 27. So they withdrew from around the dwelling of Korach, Dasan and Aviram. And here we come to the unbelievable intensity of the hate. Dasan and Aviram went out standing upright. Upright meaning, disdainfully, mockingly, like scorn and sneering at Moses. And they're standing there at the entrance of their tents together with wives, their children, and their infants. Okay? So basically, here's Moses. Just see. Moses is coming with all the elders of Israel, one last chance, offering a fig leaf and saying, it's over. Let's make up. Let's make this work. How can we live together in peace and harmony? And Dasan and Aviram come out of their tents with their families, sneering at Moses, refusing to even acknowledge and to talk to him, staring disdainfully at Moses. At that moment, Moses realized that when you're dealing with something that there's no logical explanation, there's sometimes where no matter how logical you may be, and no matter how right you may be, and no matter how sincere and caring you may be, there's no one to talk to. And so Moses said, verse 28, Moses said, with this, know that the Lord sent me to do all these deeds, for I did not devise them myself, referring to making Aaron the high priest and the Levites and all that. I prove now that everything I have done is not from me, but from God. If these men die, and the fate of all men be visited upon them, then the Lord has not sent me. If they die a regular death and they just get old and they croak and whatever, then that's not God. But if the Lord creates a creation and the earth opens its mouth and follows them and all that is theirs, and they descend in the grave, these men have provoked the Lord. So what Moses is saying over here is something very, very important. It's not enough that they die. And Moses never, ever prayed for people to die. In fact, every time God said the Jews are sinners, I'm going to destroy them, I'm going to kill them, Moses prays, forgive them, have compassion on them, again and again. Moses is the most loving person you can imagine, constantly trying to save the lives of people that have earned their own destruction and their own demise. And here Moses is saying, if they die a regular death, then this does not really prove. This doesn't really answer their arguments, because maybe they just died. They're coming with such an intensity of hate, with such a illogical hatred, that they're saying, even if you gouge at our eyes, it won't come. And they're standing here and they know that it's over. And the smell of the incense, etc., it's over. And they refuse to even to talk. They need to, the Jews that are watching, need to see that this is something unique, that God created a special form of death just for these people, a form of death that never existed before, and a form of death that will never exist again. And therefore he prays to God to create a new creation, that the earth shall swallow them up alive. It's a creation. It's a new way of people don't die by being swallowed in the earth. They go to heaven normally. The angel of death comes and their soul leaves their body. Here, a new creation just for them. And what happens? Let's go back to the story. Verse 31, as the Torah tells us, as soon, here we go, 1 second. As soon as Moses finished speaking all these words, the earth beneath them split open. The earth beneath them opened its mouth and swallowed them and their houses and all the men who were with Korach and all their property. They and all they possessed descended alive into the grave. The earth covered them up, and they were lost to the assembly. Who? Yeah, the sons of Korach survived because the sons of Korach did teshuvah, and the sons of Korach maybe be next year's class. but they said God made a shelf who wanted to disrespect their father, but they realized their father was wrong and that Moses was right. In their hearts were on the side of Moshe, and they prayed for Moshe, so they didn't die. But yeah.
Because it says all the men who were with second to the ground.
Yes. Here the Korah, well, sons I just said were saved at the end, but on the outside the Jews didn't see that their sons were saved. Korach and Dasan and Aviram died a unique death, unlike the other 250 men who brought the pans of incense, and the fire descended and burnt them from the incense, which is the same way that Nadav and Aviram. The story gets affected, but the two sons of Aaron, Nadav, who entered into the temple unauthorized on the day of the inauguration with fire, with incense, and the fire came out of the altar, out of the Holy of Holies, and consumed them, and their souls left their body. Their bodies remained intact, but their souls left their bodies, etc. So they died in a certain way, a holy death. They died from the fire of God coming to them, and that's how they died.
They had holy intentions.
They had wrong, but good, not holy. Holy means you're doing what God wants. So just because something feels spiritual to you, but if it's not what God wants, it ain't holy. Let's be very clear. They had feel good. They had noble intentions, but they were not holy at all. Just put that on the record. Okay.
Which is a very good point for all of us to learn.
It's a very important point, yes. It's a very important point that what feels good is not necessarily holy, and what's holy is not necessarily what looks spiritual and looks holy. Absolutely, it's a very important point, and we will make note of it because it's important to make note of.
So how did Korach die?
So how did Korach die? Well, so Korach and Dasan and Aviram died this death. And by the way, the Medrash describes this. It's fascinating. So let me briefly, because I still have a few more stories for tonight, but briefly, what happens is that the earth starts to open up. The mouth of the earth, now we never knew the earth had a mouth, begins to open up all over. And the earth went around where people were standing to get any possession that belonged to Korach or to Dasan and Aviram. So let's say Dasan had given a shirt or an item in somebody's tent. The earth opened up around where there was belongings that belonged to them and sucked it in. And when the earth opened, it let forth a tremendous roar. The earth was there was tremendous noise. In addition, the heat of Gehenna, of hell, rose up because the hell, actually, when Moses prayed to God and said that if the opening of hell is right under us, let it open up. If not, move the opening of hell to be under the ground of Dasan and Aviram to swallow them up. So when the earth opened, hell was exposed. Hell is not a physical fire of the devil, but hell was exposed, and the heat of the fire came up, and people ran in fear. And all the Jews that were standing around, and they saw the earth going between them. The earth was opening up like cracks in the ground, but opening up all over the place. They ran for their lives, screaming and shouting, woe is to us, woe is to us. They thought the earth would swallow everybody alive. The earth went exactly, opened up, swallowed them in. They sunk into the ground. And as they were going down, they realized their sin. They were screaming, Moshe emes, Torah emes, we sinned. Moses is honest, this is true, the Torah is true. They were swallowed up. And then the earth completely closed up again with no trace of the opening, which was part of the miracle. Because whenever in a natural sinkhole or in a natural opening, so if the earth opens up, it stays open. Then you can see exactly where the sinkhole was because now the earth went down. Here, the miracle wasn't just that the earth opened exactly by the tents of Dasan and Aviram, etc., and it went exactly around their tent and didn't touch any of the other tents around them. But more importantly, afterwards, the earth was closed up again as if it never opened. Now there's an empty piece of grass where there had been a tent. That's a miracle. That's a miracle. And then people were able to realize this was a unique creation that God had made for the moment to swallow them up. There was no natural phenomenon that could explain the earth opening. And that you could explain. But opening and then reclosing without even a dent, without anything, without any mark, that is an absolutely clear sign that God orchestrated this in order to prove the righteousness of Moshe, that indeed everything that Moshe did was from God. Now, as I pointed out to you already, why did there have to be such an intense, dramatic opening of the ground and closing of the ground, and they were running and screaming? And everyone was petrified. Everyone was thought that the earth was, until it closed back up, it was going around, it was sucking things like a volcano, like a vacuum. Belongings in other people's tents that belonged to Dasan and Aviram was sucked out of their tents by the force of the opening of the ground. Until, as the verse that we just read says, there was nothing left. There was no trace. There was no trace left of their names. There was nothing left anywhere in the camp of Israel that had once belonged to them. It had all been sucked up into the ground. Why is such an intense ending, such an intense, unique punishment? Where Moses prays to God and says, create something unbelievable to prove that this is all from you and not from me. So they explained, their hatred was so intense. It wasn't like they were arguing and saying, we want to bring incense, we want to be holy, we want to be a high priest like Aaron, every Jew is holy, so let every Jew bring the incense. If you come with an argument, even if the argument is wrong, but there's an argument, so we can make a test. Come bring the incense, and let's see whose incense does God accept, whose does not God accept. You sin with the spies, there's a reason why they sinned. They got afraid. They felt the land was too difficult to conquer. So they were wrong, they sinned, they should have had faith in God, but the sin had an explanation. The sin had some kind of logical basis. wrong, incorrect, but there was a basis. So there's a natural way of dealing with that. But when your sin has no basis in any kind of logic, it's so intense, the only ending for that could be an unnatural, supernatural, non-logical ending to prove that this is no logical explanation, no logical ending would ever answer this. So the question is, why do they have such an intense hatred for Moses? Why are they so anti-Moses that when Moses comes to make peace with them, they say, first of all, Moses calls them for a meeting to say, even if you gouge out our eyes, we will not show up. And then when Moses comes to their tent, can you imagine? Moses is coming with all the elders of Israel, coming to try and make peace. And they refuse to even talk. They stand there disdainfully scorning Moses. So, jealousy, okay. Why do they hate Moses so much? How do we understand now, there are people who are professional haters. There are people that are professional haters. I don't understand it. I can't relate to it in any way, shape, or form. I really can't. I thought about this. But they literally thrive off fights. There's some people that thrive off not only drama. Drama is an understatement. Some people thrive off drama, but some people fight off politics, off hatred, off, do you hear it? They get excited. This guy is in a fight with that guy, and they talk about it, and they fan the flames of the fire, because it literally gives them a reason to exist. They have no positive reason for their existence. Oh, but now I have a fight to be involved in. Now I have what to live for another day. There are people like that. They're very, very sad creatures. I honestly, my heart goes out to them because they're the most negative, unhappy people that could possibly exist. But as a sickness, but there's people that are professional agitators, professional fighters, professional. But let's try, and that's how I always understood Dasan and Aviram. But let's go see. There's a few more stories in the Torah where we also find Dasan and Aviram. I'm going to go through the stories, and after I'm going to share with you the beginning of the end. The beginning, which is really the beginning of the end. You ready for this, my friends? Okay, yeah. Question.
I have a question. Were these the same two men when Moshe stood up to the Egyptian who was feeding them?
Yes, very good. So I was about to say.
So if that's the case.
Well, let me first say the story. I didn't say the story yet. You're jumping ahead. Give me a yes. Okay. So where's the first time in the Torah that we find Dasan and Aviram? So the first, yeah, exactly. So the first time we have Dasan and Aviram is in the very beginning of the book of Exodus, chapter 2 of Exodus. Again, some context is important here. Moses is the adopted prince of Pharaoh, right? What I'm going to say now is important to appreciate what foolish is what Dasan and Aviram do. He's the adopted prince who's loved by Pharaoh. So much so that he is able to do many things to the Jewish people. Do you know that Moses got Pharaoh to give the Jews a day of rest? The Jews used to work 7 days a week. Slaves work 7 days a week. And Moshe comes to Pharaoh and says, Pharaoh, it'll be much better if you would let the Jewish people have a day off. They would have a day off, then they would be better slaves the other 6 days. If you work a person nonstop, eventually they start falling apart. Give them a day of rest, they'll work harder the other 6 days. And he convinced Pharaoh. And so Pharaoh gave the Jews Shabbos as a day of rest, but they wouldn't work to rejuvenate them. So Moses is an advocate for the Jewish people in the palace. He put into place other safeguards too, certain worker compensation, if you will, certain worker safety laws to protect the Jewish slaves, convincing Pharaoh it was for the benefit of Pharaoh to have better, workforce. In addition, we know that Moshe not only was an advocate for the Jews, not only did Pharaoh listen to him and take his advice very seriously, Moshe was willing to put his life on the line for the Jews. We find the story in chapter 2 of Exodus where Moshe goes out and he sees an Egyptian taskmaster is beating a Jew. He's beating a Jew because he raped his wife, and then the Jew knew about it. But anyway, he's trying to kill this Jew to keep the secret. And Moshe sees the Egyptian taskmaster beating on this innocent, helpless Jewish slave. And what does Moshe do? He kills the Egyptian taskmaster. So here is a man standing up for the Jewish people. And then what happens? The Torah tells us, I'm going now to chapter 2 of Exodus, verse number 13. He went out on the second day. And behold, Moses saw 2 Hebrew men who were quarreling. And he said to the wicked one, Lama takere'echa, why are you going to strike your friend? Who are these two Hebrew men that are quarreling? Tells us Rashi, Dasan and Aviram. They were the ones who saved some of the manna which they had been forbidden to leave overnight. I'll tell you that story. Next, these are the same wicked men that we'll find later on. That's how does Rashi know that these wicked men that are fighting are the same wicked men? Because the words are the same. And Moshe says to one of them, Rasha, wicked one, why are you hitting your friend? He says friend, he means he's also wicked like you. So he's calling them both wicked. When two people are fighting, they're wicked. In the worldview of Moses, if you can lift your hand to hit your friend, you are a Rasha. He says, Rasha, why are you hitting your friend? So how do these men respond? Instead of responding, saying, you're right. We really shouldn't be fighting with our friends. That's really not so nice. Our mommy taught us in preschool not to hit, right? That's what they should have said. Right? No hitting. Hitting is not nice. Hands are only for sharing. I don't know whatever. Instead, what do they say? Verse 14. He retorted to Moshe, who made you a man, a prince, and a judge over us? Do you plan to slay me as you have slain the Egyptian? Moses became frightened and said, indeed, the matter has become known. So instead of saying, thank you for standing up and defending the Jewish people, thank you for killing the Egyptian taskmaster who was killing our brothers, instead they start to get angry at Moses. Who made you the guy in charge? Who made you the ruler? Who made you the prince? Are you going to kill us like you killed the Egyptian? At that moment, Moshe realized that they were going to tell him. It says that the matter indeed has become known. How did it become known? Because these two men, listen to this, my friends, Dasan and Aviram went to go tattle on Moses to Pharaoh. And they're the ones in the Medrash describes it, the Sachatov explains. They came to Pharaoh and they started to badmouth Moses. They were actually elders, Dasan and Aviram. They were considered important people in the community. And they actually were one of the taskmasters of the Jewish people. And they come to Pharaoh and they say, Pharaoh, this man Moshe, and Pharaoh doesn't want to hear, he loves him. He killed an Egyptian taskmaster. And when Pharaoh hears that, he has no choice. First, he's a Jew, and Pharaoh doesn't care, etc., etc. He killed an Egyptian taskmaster, and Pharaoh had no choice but to have Moshe killed. Then God did a miracle. Pharaoh gives a command to have Moshe arrested, to kill him. God makes the executioners turn blind. He makes them turn deaf. They can't hear the command of Pharaoh. Moshe's neck turns to stone. They try killing him. They're unable to. Moshe escapes nothing. He runs away to Midian, where he's there for many years. He marries Zipporah. He gets married, has a family in Midian. Why does he run away to Midian? Because of Dasan and Aviram that had tattled on him and tried to have him killed by Pharaoh. Do you understand this? Here's a guy that's your advocate in the palace. Here's the guy that's been fighting for the Jewish people, who gets you a day of rest, who's willing to kill an Egyptian that's hurting a Jew. And because you're offended that he called you a Rasha, you're willing to have the best friend the Jews could have killed because he offended you? He hurt your ego. You understand what's happening here? Moshe hurt their ego. He said Rasha. He called them wicked. And by the way, they were wicked. They were fighting. Moshe didn't make it up. Moshe wasn't wrong. Moshe was right. Sometimes the truth hurts. Sometimes the truth hurts. The truth hurts. Being called wicked by Moses hurts. And they're so offended. Their egos are so fragile, so hateful, that they're willing to have Moshe killed for that. And they go and they tattle and they snitch on Moses to Pharaoh. And now the verse says, he said, now indeed the matter has become known. And he had to run for his life as a refugee, to run away with no money, no nothing. He literally runs with the shirt on his back, nothing, from a prince in the palace to a refugee, wandering because of Dasan and Aviram. Yeah, how hate. You want to understand how hate can destroy? Here you have Moshe, who's fighting for the Jews. He's defending you. You have a day off every week because of Moshe. And I'm willing to have him killed because he offended me. Let's continue the story. It gets better, worse, however you want to look at it. It's worse, it's better than ever. So we're going to jump ahead to chapter 16 now. Chapter 16, again, some more context, okay? Every one of these stories require context. So the Jewish people are in the desert for 30 days, and after 30 days, they run out of food. Matzah, I'm saying Nebach. They were probably hungry before 30 days, but after 30 days, they're officially hungry. They have no more matzah. They complain to Moshe, we're going to die in the desert. So Moshe prays to God, and bread comes down from the heaven. Manna comes down from the heaven. A miracle. A miracle. And in whose merit does the manna come down? Moshe. We know the water came from Miriam, the clouds of glory came from Aaron. The food is a direct miracle in the merit and by cause of the prayers of Moses. You would think everyone would love Moses for helping bring food to the entire Jewish people, right? So you would think. What happens? So the Torah tells us that Moshe tells them to all go out to gather enough for whatever they need, but no one should keep it overnight. No one, this is the law that God said. No one should keep the month overnight. Why not? It's a test of faith, another conversation that God wants us to trust in God, that every morning God will provide what we need, and going to bed without food in the closet, in the pantry is a test, whatever. Let's not get distracted. Go to bed. No, don't leave anything overnight. In the morning, every morning, trust in God, and He will provide bread from the heavens. What happened? Says the Torah, something very interesting. Verse 19 of chapter 16. So Moses said to them, let no one leave over any of it until the morning. But some men did not obey Moses. And they left over some of it until the morning. And what happened at night? It bred worms and became putrid. And Moses became angry with them. Who are these men? So Rashi tells us these men are our good buddies, Dasan and Aviram. And because they left over the man, so the commentaries of Medrash tells us that it says in the verse that the man became full of worms and it smelled very bad of putrid. What happened is that there was a tremendous amount of maggots that night, in one night, formed in the man, and they were crawling out from the tent of Dasan and Aviram. And now there's a tremendous odor. You ever smell something terribly, full of maggots? The smell is intense. We have that, me too. I've seen it twice. One with a dead body, whatever. That was full of maggots and those worms and the flies. We know the story. Flies everywhere. I won't get into the details. Literally, like when they took the body out, whatever, there's like flies, swarm. But TMI. I was standing right there. Yeah, I've done a lot of cool things about cool things. I had a lot of life experience. Yeah, I stood outside the apartment and I prayed from when the police broke down the door, or actually climbed through the window, and till the medical examiner came to do a crimes investigation. I stood outside.
Did you know that was in the job description?
No, I stood outside for a few hours in the beautiful Florida weather, and I said to them, and I prayed, and I called the son who lives in Israel and whatever, and yeah, Bruce was involved in this story. Bruce is a neighbor there, but that's not the story. I want to go again, a little distracted. So yeah, I had one to my fridge also. I'll tell you a more happy story. When we moved, we taped up we had a fridge in the garage, and the mover, and he taped up. I don't even know the story. So the movers, they moved our house from our old house to our new house. So they taped whatever, that the doors can open. So they taped it, which is fine. They put the garage fridge in my garage. There was no electric in the garage for a fridge. We had to run a wire. We put in an outlet, not from outside, which is from the panel. We made so we got an electrician to do it. It took a long time. So it was, I don't know how long the fridge sat. Summertime. We didn't need a garage fridge then. In the meantime, we thought the fridge was empty. The fridge wasn't empty. There was stuff in the fridge.
Oh, no.
There was stuff in the fridge, fruit, and I don't know what was in the fridge. And we didn't know. It sat taped up in the garage for a month. I don't know how long exactly. And then it was actually a Friday night. So it smelled. We began to smell in the garage. We began to whatever. And I'm going to make a long story short, most people don't realize that there was like maggots coming from the fridge. We opened up the fridge, we opened the thing, and I opened the door of the fridge. The intensity of the smell was beyond description, and the thing was swarming with maggots. Swarming. We took it. I have no idea because it was a closed fridge. It was swarming. Literally, like the moment the door opened, like because it was kind of like sealed in there. But
It forms when you have rotted meat.
there was no meat. There was fruit. I think there was some cheese in there. There was like
different food that you have and meat that's rotting because there's no air or to not keep it cool.
Whatever, we got distracted, my friends. Anyway, the point is, so the maggots come crawling out of the tent of Dasan and Aviram, and the whole Jewish nation sees the worms and the putrid, and there's a smell, a cloud of odor. The Torah says that the man became putrid. The whole Israel stunk. The whole camp stunk from the spoiled, rotten man that these men had left over till the morning. Now, you would think that after that they would hang their heads in shame. Imagine out of my garage, everyone in the neighborhood would see the thank God they didn't see. Whatever, we took the fridge out. We actually started hosing it down the spray, and then no, we didn't. We couldn't because there was we hosed it, but inside the machine, like inside more were coming out. No, whatever. We threw it at. I don't know if the garbage took it. If they knew what they were taking with them, but whatever. Yeah, no, that fridge. We tried, but there was no saving that. There was too much. Anyway, so yeah, it's a true story. I think it was a Friday night when we discovered it. Whatever. Like, yeah, it was. Anyway, so they should have hung their heads in shame and but instead of recognizing that they were the laughing stock, that their whole tent stunk to high heavens of putrid, rotten mun, you know what happens? Comes Friday. On Friday, they go out to collect the mun, and what happens? Double. That's right. Friday, they come back from collecting. Instead of having the regular amount of the omer that they had, now they have double the amount. Come to Moshe, what happened? So Moshe says to them, it's Friday. Shabbos, you don't go out collecting. We don't work on Shabbos, right? Today, you're going to get double. Tonight, leave over till the morning, because tonight, Friday night, the man will stay good. And on Shabbos, you'll eat what you prepared on Erev Shabbat on Friday. But tomorrow, don't go out to collect man, because you don't go out of the camp on Shabbos. You can't travel on Shabbos. There won't be any man tomorrow for you to have. Now, of course, what do Dasan and Aviram think? Our big buddies. They think, Moshe, he's trying to steal it off for himself. He's telling everyone not to go out, even though everyone got double month. So no one was going to go hungry because everyone got double the amount. But Moshe, they started to convince themselves. Moshe, and they started telling everyone else. You know why Moshe is saying that? Because he wants to collect it all for himself. He wanted to stay home. He'll go collect man. What would he do with it? No one knows, because they should have already known that if you're going to try and keep it, it'll stink and get full of maggots. But anyway, Moshe wants to steal all of your man. So what happens? Says the Torah to us, verse 27, it came about that on that seventh day, some of the people went out to gather manna, but they did not find any. Why did they go out to find and they didn't find? So the commentaries tell us that they actually went out early in the morning and they took their man. They didn't eat Friday and Shabbos. They took all their man and they laid it out in the field, and then came back to the camp at regular wake-up time and said, my friends, let's go collect man. Let's go see if Moses is not lying to us. Now, this is their own breakfast that they put out there. So they gather a whole bunch of people that are getting convinced. They're riling up the people. Moses is trying to steal your money. Moses is trying to steal your bread. Look at it, with selfish guy trying to steal your money. And they go out to the field where they had just put their money an hour before. And guess what? Torah said they didn't find any. It was gone. Where did it go? The birds ate it. The birds came, and God did a miracle, and a big swarm of birds came, and all the money they had put out in the field, it was all gone. It was all gone. So in the first all, they looked like fools because there was no money in the field. Second of all, they went to bed hungry that day because they had no food to eat because they had just put it out all in the field. And that's why every year on that Shabbos, when we read about the man, which is the Parsha of Beshalach, we also put out food for the birds before Shabbat as a thanks to the birds for taking the man to prevent Moshe from being embarrassed by the evil scheme of these men that are looking for ways to hurt Moshe. Again, where's the logic? Where's the logic? I'll take questions in a second. Where's the logic? Moshe's giving you food from the heavens. He gave you double on Friday. Say, thank you very much. I appreciate it. No. Let me see how I can destroy the man. What would happen if God got angry and God would say, okay, that's it. You don't trust me? No man. The Jews would suffer as a result of hatred of this animosity that these two men are carrying? Yes, question.
Why would they even come out of Egypt? Why would they?
They're part of the Jews. They come from the tribe of Reuben.
No, because there's so many complaints from it.
By the way, okay.
From the beginning, that's not back in Egypt already.
Okay. Do you want to know something really amazing? Since you're asking, so I actually learned today. I was not going to talk about it because a whole other approach is a whole other blowing your mind away. They actually did not leave Egypt with the Jewish people. They did not leave with the Jewish people. It says in the Torah that when the Jews were lost in the desert, they were wandering. So Vayemer Pare, it says that Pare said on the Jewish people, Nevuchim Him Ba'aretz, that they are lost. Nevuchim Him Ba'midbar. Vayemer Pare L'bnei Yisrael, Nevuchim Him, something like that. So when he said it to the Jewish people, so Rashi explained, not to the Jewish people. There were no Jewish people in Egypt. It's after the Exodus. He said to the Jewish people. But the Targum Yonasan says, who are the Jewish people he's talking to? Dasan and Aviram that stayed behind in Egypt. So they were spies, so to say, like accomplices of Pharaoh. They were close to Pharaoh. They already sniffed Moses. You know what I'm saying? They're like capos, if you will. And these guys are hanging around the palace after the Exodus. And then so Pharaoh says to the Jewish people, to Dasan and Aviram, the Jews didn't, they're lost, they're confused. So Dasan and Aviram go with Pharaoh to the splitting of the sea, to the Sea of Reeds, and there somehow they switch positions and they see people are drowning, and they run out of the drowning sea, and we drown the Jewish people.
Wait, how did they get, I'm confused. How come they didn't drown
Because that's when, so actually, if you pay attention, I'm really, it's not off subject, but what?
Didn't kill them during the plague of darkness.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, good question. Good question. So, good question. So, first of all, if you look carefully in the Az Yashir, it says that the Jewish people went from the sea, from the sea to the dry land. From the sea, from the dry land into the sea, and then to the end, from the sea into the dry land. The second time, if you look through the Az Yashir, I need a chumash to see that. Whatever. If you look in the Az Yashir, it says the same thing twice. It says that they went from the sea, the Jewish people went to the sea. There was the whole thing, the walls and all that, and then the sea returned to the thing, and then at the end it says that the Jewish people. Here, I have a siddur here. So whatever. So but it says it twice. So they went from the sea into the dry land. So the first time was the Jewish people. First time was the Jewish people. The second time, at the very end, when they went back in the second time, no, this is not actually not in the it's in the Chumash. Whatever. It's in the Chumash. And that's why it says the water didn't want to open up for them. If you look at 2 times, it says in the Torah that the water became like a wall for the Jewish people. The first time says that it was a choma, a wall with a vav. Second time says choma without a vav. Which choma without a vav could also spell chema, anger. The water was angry at God. God said, we're going up, let's say, the water was angry at God. The water, I should open up for these people. And after the class, I'll show you the verses where the Targum says that the water opened the second time for Dasan and Aviram. But I wasn't going to say it because it's too confusing. It's too much stuff.
No, you answered the question. That was you answered it. The water opened the second time just
for them. This is what the Targum says. Why did they merit it? Because they took beatings for the Jewish people. Whatever. But let's go back to our story here. We have a fourth story. Besides for the Jews with the man. Besides for that, we have another story. Chapter 16 of Bamidbar, last week's parasha, where the spies come back from the land of Israel and they say it's terrible, we'll never conquer the land, blah, 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 blah. And the Jews get depressed. All of a sudden, look at chapter 16, verse number 4. All the Jews are crying. The spies are saying, not before the Jews are crying, the spies are saying, we can't conquer the land, we're never going to get to it. And all of a sudden, verse 4, they said to each other, let us appoint a leader and return to Egypt. Now, Rashi doesn't say, but the commentary says to us, who is this man talking to his brother? Who's the guy talking to his brother? The same people that were fighting before, Dasan and Aviram. Same Dasan and Aviram. So here again, by the story of the spies, they see an opportunity, they jump. Let's go back to Egypt. Yeah.
But even before that, I think there's one that you missed. That's the golden calf. They were also agitators in that. I don't know if they said something similar, like they.
So yes, by the golden calf, not that they were agitated, but they joined the Aviram by the golden calf. And in fact, of the golden calf, it says that they wanted to make that Dasan would replace Moshe, and Aviram will replace Aaron.
Yeah, and they had the magic piece of paper that Moses Moses used to raise children?
That wasn't the Aviram. That was the boy that Moshe pulled out of the wall. His name was Shimshi, I think. He was a boy that was adopted by Moshe, that he had saved from the wall, and later that also came back to haunt Moshe. That's another story, not for right now. Anyway, so here we have, my friends, I know we're running out of time here, but here we have a complete profile, so to say, of people that at every single opportunity will do absolutely anything they can in order to make life difficult for Moshe. At every opportunity, Moshe is doing everything he can to help the Jews. In Egypt, he's helping the Jews. In the desert, he's giving them bread from the heavens. He's trying to help them enter the land of Israel. Here, too, he's coming to them to make peace. He's coming with the elders to their house to appease them. So what's the source? So I was thinking about it. And if you go back to Exodus chapter 2, the very first time we find Moshe interacting with Dasan and Aviram, what happens? They're fighting. And by the way, because they're fighters, certain people are by nature, they always see problems, they always see fight. So if they can fight Moses, they'll fight Moses. If they don't have a Moses to fight, at this point they're still slaves, we'll fight each other. It's not like it's Moses, they're inherently sick people. But at that moment, Moshe says, Russia, wicked man, why are you hitting your friend who's also wicked like you? At that moment, Moses offends them. He offends them. It wasn't Moses' intention. His intention was to show them how destructive their behavior is, that they should stop. The reason why Moshe used such harsh language by calling him a wicked person was not because he was angry, he was trying to teach them values, trying to teach them how a Jew behaves himself. And the Jewish worldview, hitting another person is an act of wickedness. But they get offended. And here we come to, I think, is what motivates, what drives Dasan and Aviram? This unbelievable personal vendetta and agenda against Moses, their inability to let go. Their inability to let go. I wrote about this a few weeks ago. They had an anger against Moshe because of a statement Moshe made to them 80 years ago. 80 years ago. And because they could not let a wrong, in their mind, now Moshe wasn't wrong, but in their mind, because they couldn't let go of their hurt egos, their fragile, hurt egos, and because they were holding on to this anger of 80 years, they cannot see Moshe in a logical way. It's not that they didn't consciously say, well, Moshe said we're Russia, so let's go hide man in the overnight to try and prove that Moshe is a bad guy because he called us a wicked man 80 years ago. No, they didn't make that conscious connection. They were unable to see anything good in Moses. They were unable to. They saw a personal need to fight Moses at every single corner, at every single opportunity, because they had so much animosity in their heart that they couldn't let go. They didn't even know it. They didn't even realize how much baggage they were carrying. They didn't even realize how much emotional negativity they were carrying within themselves that they couldn't let go of a statement made to them 80 years ago. So not only did they get offended, they literally stayed offended until the moment they were swallowed up by the earth alive, which shows you how far this hatred could take you. They never, ever let go of this hurt ego, of this animosity. And I think there is such an important lesson for us here. Such an important lesson, not what to be, but what not to be. We all get offended. Every single person is going to be offended at some point in their life. It's just part of interacting with other human beings. When you interact with other human beings, there'll be times when another human being will say something to you don't like. Either you live in the ivory tower and you're going to be offended. It's going to happen. Now, of course, ideally, you should have the emotional, maturity and security to be able to hear valid criticism when it comes up and to not be offended, but to understand the critique or if it's something stupid or something that's not correct, to that guy is whatever, and to let it go. But even if we got offended, even if someone says something that hurt us, that we couldn't just, take the honest critique for whatever reason. When we can't let go of past wrongs, when we can't let go of a hurt that someone hurt us, you know who ends up carrying all that baggage? Us. And Dasan and Aviram are literally schlepping around pekelach, we say in Yiddish. Pekelach are packages. They're running around with packages and packages of hatred and animosity and anger that so overwhelms them. It becomes such a driving, motivating factor in their lives that they can't identify it. They can't place it and say, well, this is what caused that kind of anger. This is why I hate Moshe. This is why I'm going to join the fight of Korach because of what he said to me. The hatred became so deep within them. It became so ingrained in them. Like when you sit at a computer like hunched like this, eventually, like even when you're walking, you walk like this, right? It becomes part of your posture. Their hatred became part of their identity. Became part of they were carrying it. It's terrible. There's a great story of a rich man, sort of, but it's part of the point. He was driving in this beautiful wagon, and he sees a poor peddler standing on the side of the road, like walking on the side of the road. There's, carrying all of his bags, his suitcases. He's a peddler. So the rich man says, "You're going to town? I'll give you a ride." Pulls over. So the guy gets into the wagon. This poor man gets into this big, beautiful wagon with the big horses in the front. And they're riding, and the rich man sees that the poor guy is still holding all the packages over his shoulders. He's holding these big bags. He's sitting there hunched over with these big bags. So the rich man says, "Put the bag down and make yourself comfortable. And you're sitting in the wagon. Why are you still holding the bag?" So he says to the rich man, "It's bad enough that I'm making your horses let me make them carry the weight of my packages too. You understand? So we're holding on to packages, and we're holding on, and we become negative, bitter, depressed, angry people. Not we as me and you sitting in this room, people. We all to some extent. And we're carrying around packages of 80 years. Packages of 80 years as someone called you a wicked person. Someone says something, in this case, right. Let's say it is right and the truth hurts. And a lot of times the things that hurt us the most are the things that are actually, that are real. But we're not going to go there now. Someone says something, and we can't let it go. And it becomes deeper within us and deeper within us until there's no way that logic can even work anymore. Dasan and Aviram were swallowed up alive by the earth. Not only them, their wives, their kids, their money, their possessions. There's nothing left in the universe of Dasan and Aviram. Clothing in someone else's house was sucked away into the pit. The Torah says there's no mention, there's no remembrance of their names. When you carry this hatred and this animosity in your heart, it doesn't only drag you down. It drags down your wife, drags down your kids, it drags down your happiness, it drags down your business, it drags down your ability to have social. Everything in your life gets sucked into this pit. It's literally a hell. The earth opens, and you sink deeper and deeper and deeper into this cycle of hatred that becomes overwhelming until you can't escape it anymore. Dasan and Aviram couldn't escape it. Not to be like Dasan and Aviram. What do we do if you have to recognize, it. And someone that doesn't recognize, Dasan and Aviram didn't recognize. I don't think, now I'm telling you I thought about this. I don't think that they felt the need to fight Moshe because they didn't like the leadership. They had whatever issues. But eventually their hatred to Moshe was not because of a reason. He gave you the man. What did Moshe do wrong when he gave the Jews the man? Nothing. They have no complaint to Moshe. But it bothers them deeply to see Moshe giving the Jews something. And all the Jews saying, "Wow, thank you, Moshe, for giving us bread." They can't handle it. They're willing to give away their own bread. That's what I'm trying to bring out. I don't know if I'm bringing out the point enough. They were willing to self-destroy because of their hatred. They're willing to kill Moshe, who was defending them in the palace. They're willing to give away their bread and perhaps jeopardize all the bread of the Jewish people. They're willing to give up going to the land of Israel. They're willing to be swallowed by the earth. Gouge out our eyes. We won't come to you. That's how they hate them. So that's a lesson for us. Not to hold on to the hate. 80 years later is already too late. When you're holding on to something for 80 years, you need professional help to extract that out of you. At the time, we have to learn not to carry packages. Don't. What my advice? So if you need professional help, yeah, you need to go to therapy to like talk it out and to learn how to be able. Why is therapy valuable? Therapy is valuable to a certain extent. A big part of why it's valuable because it helps people that bury hatred and hurt and trauma. It gives you the ability to they know how to schlep it out of you, how to extract it. It's an extraction. They let you talk and talk and talk, and eventually they help you express and to. So sometimes that's very important. People are carrying around a lot of emotional anger and emotional animosity. They need that. They need therapy. They need the ability to find what's bothering you. Get it out of your chest and the source is ego. The source is Dasan and Aviram's ego. They were offended. You call me a Russia? How dare you call me a Russia? They were deeply, deeply offended by that. And because of that, they carry that with them in themselves forever and ever. So the questions of to get rid of the metaphorical hate packages. Okay, it's a good question. How to get rid of the hate packages?
Can I give you an idea?
Yeah, I have an idea. Yeah, what do you want to say, Karen?
It's not mine. I heard it from my awesome one that I listened to, which I thought to tie down. If you remember a few weeks ago, you said Dasan and Aviram is two characters that you're not why so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And then here they said that Moshe got up to go to them, Vayakum Moshe Vayakan. So the rabbi explains that there is us as a whole is how much he had to just humble himself down even more.
Moshe had to humble himself.
Moshe had to humble himself down even more and to go forth for the sake of peace, to go to himself. And
For Moshe, though, not
but
for Moshe. That's answering.
No, but it does, because it can teach you, even whether you have the anger or not, especially if you have the anger. I feel like the first step for you to take is work on that. Let me make that first step. And if you're hating on somebody or if you have a fight with somebody, just take that first step.
So I'll repeat what you're saying for the recording, although I don't think it's going to answer. A person that's dealing with hate is not that idealistic. What Karina is saying is they learn from Moshe. Moshe was willing to go and humble himself, to go and try to make peace, even though he didn't have to. He didn't have to go to Dasan Aviram. He could have had them killed a long time ago. But he still was so humble, he's willing to go make peace with them. And Moshe was the most humble of all men. That level of humility is probably out of the reach of a lot of people. People are dealing with hate and anger and all that. It's too far. That's like bad. I would say it's a little different. It's a whole other class. Writes that if they worship Avodah Zarah. The Rambam writes this. Why is getting angry like worshiping idol worship? Because you only get angry if you think that someone did something that wasn't supposed to happen to you. Why am I angry at you for cutting me off, for hitting me, whatever? Because it's mine. Who gives you the right to touch my stuff? Who gives you the right to hurt me? And so therefore, I think that you hurt me. There's a very, very powerful story in Tanakh where David was running away from Shaul, from King Saul was trying to kill him. And he was standing, and then I think it was Doimi or someone else came and started cursing David. He was fleeing. He was cursing him, right? Remember the story? And Yoav, who was a hot-headed general of King David, said, let me go kill this dog. If I'm not mistaken, calls him a dog. Let's speak this against my master. He's ready to go, take the sword and to avenge the honor of King David, who wasn't the king yet. And it says, you think that Shimi, or Shim, speaking about against me, whoever it was, him. God is putting into his words, putting into his mouth the words I need to hear. David HaMelech didn't get angry, not because he was so humble. He was humble too. David was very humble. But David understood the fact that this person is cursing me. It's not because this person is cursing me. This person doesn't have the ability to speak a single word, but for the fact that God put in his mouth at this moment the words that I need. So the reason, and that's why worship, because idol worship is also saying there's something besides for God versus some other force. And then there's a God called, I don't know, Baal, whatever. So the world, and this ... that just offended me here. Of course, the fact that he said what he said, God needed you to hear at this moment that you're a Russia. If Dasan would have truly accepted, that everything that happens is from God, and every interaction you have is from God. So, the fact that Moses is calling us a wicked person means we should wake up and we should change our behavior. Instead, they took it, they got offended. And not only did they get offended, they took they carried it with themselves for the rest of their lives until that hurt consumed them to the so they say the famous line, being angry at a grudge is like drinking poison and thinking it'll kill the other person. Yeah, that's what carrying grudges. So I'm carrying. In the meantime, who got destroyed from it? Dasan live here. And my friends, that's the story. I am so cool. Well, that was Andrew's question. How to get rid of the metaphorical hate packages by recognizing it's from God. It's not.
I believe, Rabbi, that you got your hearts are being far away from God. So the only thing is talk to God and let God to work on it. Let it go from your heart.
Let it go.
Exactly how
Let it go. That's what I'm saying. Dasan Aviram were years. They were holding on. Of course. Because you're angry, you're like worshiping. Animosity, hatred, God doesn't live with hatred. God lives with peace. That's a blessing. God is found in a place of wholesomeness, in a place of peace. When there's divisiveness, when there's separation, when there's the wars that happen with Korach, God is not found over there. Yeah. Okay, my friends. God bless you all. Gail, good night. Lalatov. Gina, thank you for saying I'm cool. Okay. I feel bad we lost everyone in Chabad. But okay, it is what it is. Yeah, what? Yes, question. 80 years to get rid of him. I'll tell you. Yeah, here. So for those who don't know about the Az Yashir. So by the way, Targums it says, I'll find it now for you. I'll leave the Zoom on the Facebook on. This one here. I'll turn it off maybe. That's the story, my friends. Laila Tov, and next week I don't know what next week is, but same time, same place.